It seems like half of what I did this week was to make a list of everything I needed to do. Everything I needed to get done before we go on vacation soon. And then I spent the other half of the week trying to get the list done. And of course you know how that went. Other much more important things came along. Plus, sitting around making a list was really not a very fulfilling experience. And I just wonder if you've ever had that kind of week yourself. It reminded me again and again that we can't accomplish everything. That's really a pretty straightforward truth. So why then do so many of us have trouble with it? What convinces us that we have to be everything to everyone in order to make a significant contribution in our world? How do we get from that thinking to the place where we can say, you can't do everything? Today is the first in a series of messages that is using as a resource the book by United Methodist pastor Shane Stanford. And the book is entitled, You Can't Do Everything, So Do Something. And the core thought is this: the real need for our world is not that we do every part. It's just that we do our part. And working together to do that something that God calls us to do, all of us working together, we will transform the world. So today, let's take a look at the first part. Let's think about this statement that we probably all need to hear. You can't do everything. Did you ever say that to yourself? You can't do everything. Howard Gardner is a professor at Harvard who spent his life looking at how people are intelligent. He realized the question is not, how smart are you? But rather, how are you smart? Did you get that? Not how smart are you, but how are you smart? His groundbreaking work revealed that everyone has what he called an exceptionalized intelligence. And he narrows it down to 9 different intelligences that people have. Some of them are in line with what is more known, like forms of intelligence that are language and math and the basics of our comprehension. And others are intelligences that are related to our interpersonal or intrapersonal abilities, where a primary gift might be how one deals with other people, or how we understand ourselves enough to make a real contribution to the world in which we live. Thinking about that fascinating work brings to mind the words of Peter as he spoke to the members of the early Christian church. Here's what he said: God has given gifts to each of you from his great variety of spiritual gifts. Manage them well so that God's generosity can flow through you. Every one of us has been gifted with something we do well. We have been crafted from God's great variety of spiritual gifts. God has provided for the full scope of gifts that the world might need in order to make God's vision a reality. And so today, both Peter and this Professor Howard remind us that none of us will ever have all the needed expertise to accomplish everything. I might be a decent pastor, but that does not mean I can rebuild a car engine. Or someone may be an expert on a computer keyboard and they may not feel comfortable making a phone call. Or maybe one who cooks well may not be able to write a paper. Or one who excels in math may not be able to paint a picture. You get the idea. We are all in this world together and everyone is needed. The idea that any of us can develop enough expertise to accomplish everything is really rather dangerous idea. Maybe some would even call it delusional. We will never be efficient enough. We will never possess enough expertise. We will never have enough resources. We'll never possess enough yearning. No matter how important your job may be, none of us can make sure that everything is done. Whether it is our employment, or our volunteer work, or our family responsibilities, or whatever, we are simply not that efficient, or knowledgeable, or versatile, or filled with enough resources to get it all done. And to accomplish everything is not only likely a physical impossibility, it also has limits with our emotional and spiritual health. So, to get us just a little bit closer to being able to say, you can't do everything, let's look at a verse from Proverbs. It says this: "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight." What can we learn from this? Here's an idea. Perhaps the hardest part of understanding why we can't accomplish everything is for us to think about the things that we usually say when that situation comes our way. We say things like, I'm too tired, I'm too busy, I'm too old, I'm too lazy, I'm too fill in the blank. When really the notion that we can accomplish everything is a heart issue. When we actually allow God to be that part of our lives that God was meant to be, and for which we were created from the beginning, then we find a different understanding. The writer of Proverbs says, trust in the Lord with all your heart. Not part of your heart, or not just at certain times, but with all your heart. And the second part says, lean not on your own understanding. We can't know everything. And certainly we can't understand the full scope of life issues that we encounter. And so God encourages us not to lean on our own understandings. Now this does not mean we are not supposed to learn. Indeed, we learn and grow every single day, but we recognize that we can't know it all or do it all. Let me tell you, I know how much of a struggle this is to live with this understanding. In our work lives, we always have that to-do list. We always have something more that we want to accomplish. I go through that all the time. As pastor, I'm spiritual leader, I'm CEO of a church, I'm confidant, I'm counselor, I'm da-da-da-da-da. There's always something to do. And in our personal lives, it's the same way. Right now, Rick and I are on a medical journey with his mother. We heard again from the doctor this week that they still don't know the source of her health issues. No matter how much we Google information, no matter how many consults we've had with the doctor so far, we don't know. And while there may be more tests to be done, we may not know. We cannot know everything, and we cannot do everything, no matter how much each of us wants to. And it can be a struggle. And yet, when we stop trying to be the final answer ourselves and admit in our hearts that we really are unable to know and understand everything, look what happens next. We are able to get out of our own way. And God is able to take all those confusing or challenging or frustrating or crooked paths in our lives and make them straight. Trust in the Lord with all your heart and lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways acknowledge him, and he will make your paths straight. One of the ways that God empowers us is by giving us gifts that are unique to each of us as individuals. We do not all have the same gifts. We are not born to like everything. We don't all like the same music or the same TV shows. We don't like the same movie or books or foods. And so given all of those differences that come to us naturally, it's not surprising that we don't all like the same tasks for doing good or the same projects for service. God has given each one of us a special yearning in our lives. Some call it passion. Others call it spiritual gifts. Some may even use the language of calling it their burden. But where our yearning is, there is our greatest potential. The yearnings are those things that keep us awake at night, keep our minds and hearts looking forward, and energize us during the day. Our yearnings are those joys or even sometimes those struggles that bear upon us until we decide to do something and take action about it. There are those areas in our lives where we want to give our time and our focus. And so perhaps our call is this: to take our passion, that area of our life that fills our hearts, the gift that God has given us, and live it to the fullest, doing whatever is necessary to be the best of sharing that gift with the world in which we live. We don't have a passion for everything, and we don't have to. We don't have all the spiritual gifts that it takes to live out all the passions that may exist. And so we are invited and encouraged to celebrate the gift that God has given to us, to me and you, and to make those choices about how we live. We remember those words of Peter as he gave them to the church. He reminds them that the gifts are to be used according to God's vision. We are to use them faithfully. And we are only one part of all that vision, for everyone else's gifts matter too. We each have the gifts that God has given us. They're all different as every person sitting in this room. And each of us indeed are an expert at something, and maybe many things. So Peter's words of wisdom to us are to manage our gifts well. In other words, he might be saying, don't overreach. Don't try to be more than you should be. Don't try to be all things to all people. Simply do what you have been given to do, to the best of your ability. God's vision is that each of us will use the gifts that we have been given. Nothing more, nothing less. And in this way, we make a difference. God has gifted us to care and to be cared about in this community. And all of us, with our gifts together, make life abundant. So it's clear, we can't do everything. I think it's pretty obvious, and I expect you already knew that before you came in here this morning. But perhaps hearing this word today will be an experience that is freeing for each of us when we accept that we can't do everything and realize that it is exciting to say we can do something. So stay tuned next Sunday as we talk about finding that something in your life, in our lives. And hopefully we will realize that the feeling we have that we have to do everything is not how God intended for God's grace to unfold in our lives. But rather there are all kinds of possibilities when we take hold of what God has planted in us. As we take this journey together, may we see that God is already at work. And God wants to take the best of what God has planted inside each of us and make it grow. Thanks be to God. Amen.